Hello and welcome to today's session. My name is Dr. Tanya Mooney, and I want to thank you for selecting our presentation today. I work full-time faculty at UAGC in Entry Point, and I'm here with my son today. I'll let him introduce himself.
Hey, my name is Cameron Mooney. I also do work at the University of Arizona Global Campus, and I actually work in our finance department. I'm a student account coordinator.
Excellent. And the title of our session today is Tales from a Mother and Son, Mental Health and Belonging in Higher Education. So we are going to share, just a few anecdotes and tales today. You'll notice as we go through the slides, we're not going to read off the slides and the research that we provide you. You can read that for yourself. What we want to do is just kind of share our story and our experiences as we both do have a diagnosis with a mental health disorder. But first, we're going to share a little bit about our family. You'll see Cameron here in each of the slides. And one thing I noticed about Cameron when he was little, he was a perfectionist. He loves to do things well. He loves to please people. He loves to care for people. He's got a huge heart. And one of the areas that he always felt like he belonged in was sports. He had camaraderie, he had safety, and he was, a proud mama here. He was an excellent athlete. So he had if you look to the bottom right here, he was the youngest of three. He still is the youngest of three. He's the baby. We have a daughter in the middle, and then our oldest son. So again, Cameron, when he was young, excellent kiddo. In high school, excelled. But again, always just so hard on himself, wanting to do well and wanting to make sure everybody knew he had a hard work ethic, so on and so forth. However, as we saw him transition from high school into working adulthood, we did see somewhat of a shift. Cam, do you mind sharing a little bit of what you experienced as you shifted from high school and out of the house into adult life?
Yeah, absolutely. And if you don't mind, a lot of my mental health conditions really did impact that. Just at the time, we may not have known. But I was diagnosed with bipolar 2 disorder. And then I do have chronic anxiety from a PTSD episode. So, with that being said, when I was younger, sports always were a great side piece for me to have friends, to be accepted. I felt like I was very good at sports, and it was something that really took a lot of the pressure away from me. As I got into the workforce, I did realize that I still placed that pressure on myself. I still wanted to be the best employee. I wanted to uh, buy the next house or buy my first house. I wanted to get on with my life with all of these expectations that I put onto myself. All of these expectations end up becoming pressure that end up deterring your mental health.
Absolutely. And we saw that shift as well. At the same time, he was going through, feeling the pressures of life. I myself, I'm a military veteran, and I was diagnosed with PTSD, post-traumatic stress disorder. So a lot of times, Cam and I, when we sit and visit about jobs and work, we really can feel each other and empathize. We know what each other is going through to a certain point. But really, we thought about doing this presentation because we felt it was important. Surely other people might be experiencing what we are. And sure enough, when we went to see the research, we see that just under 20% of working adults have a health disorder. So if you think about that, here at UAGC, Cameron and his department, the students we work with, the faculty, if you have a meeting of 10, that means about two people in that meeting are struggling in some way with mental health. So what we want to do today is really kind of have a conversation about how belonging might be different for those like us that do struggle with mental health disorder as opposed to those that may not, so that we can support those around us, the people we work with, the students that we have. So I'm going to share a little bit about the typical belonging, what I've seen other people do, and then Cam might be able to chime in and share how he faces some differences that other people might not. So this whole conference is about belonging, and you'll hear time and time again people define what that is. And really, when you think of belonging, it's what Cam spoke to, is that social acceptance. We're bonding with a larger community here at UAGC, we have the culture of care, and we really try to bring people in and create that emotional security. Another thing that I found interesting about belonging, and I can identify with, is that also a part of belonging here in higher ed or across the workplace is the feeling that you can contribute, that you have intellectual influence, that you're engaging in a meaningful position. And without that, that sense of belonging can weaken. So Cam, as you hear that list and those different things that define belonging, how might that be hitting you? Like, how is it different for you? I know how it's different for me as we
Yeah.
define that.
No, absolutely. I think you hit it right on the head. Social acceptance is a very large thing, and not to repeat itself. But for example, me working at the University of Arizona Global Campus, I was blessed to receive this job without a bachelor's degree. That can cause a lot of anxiety and then also imposter syndrome. To be able to have that social acceptance from my team and even more so from my managers and supervisors completely helps with that imposter syndrome. Now, yes, there are those situations where I still do have the imposter syndrome, but just knowing that I have a supervisor or a manager to go to support me, to accept me, and then to affirm me and my emotions, it is absolutely huge. Coming from a background of also working in a warehouse, it was not necessarily the way you would want, or we were not practicing the culture of care. With that being said, there were a lot of place, workplace things you could say that did not go my way, and they were actually bad workplace habits that I picked up. So,
Well, and I think I'd like to add on to that same thing in the military. There's those, and we're going to get into it. This is a term I learned when we were putting this together, psychological risks. When
yeah.
there are things that are not safe at work. And well, let's just go ahead and get moving into that. Okay.
Oh,
So we're going to share a little bit more as we get back to that. So Cam, remind me if I don't remember that.
okay.
So basically, what we are talking about, the reason why people with mental health disorders like us define belonging or experience belonging a little bit differently is because there's some barriers. And remember, whenever we look at barriers, it also represents opportunities. Once we identify those barriers, we can really address those. So one thing I have found, an anecdote, very common and a common thread, is whenever students reach out to me and they've maybe shared that they have a mental health disorder or they may not have shared that, the first thing, one of the primary things they ask is, are you going to kick me out? Please don't kick me out. I really want to do this. I can do this. It's like they're convincing me, not that I have the authority by any means to kick them out, but they really don't feel like they belong. I know I've talked to my supervisor many times. I always have this feeling like I'm going to get fired or I'm doing something wrong. Cam, I don't know about you, but those are real things. I don't know if you can relate or not.
Oh, 100%. I believe in our team meetings every week. I get excited that I'm not fired after every one-on-one. So,
Yeah, it's real. So those are those barriers. We maybe don't feel like we fit in or we belong. The stigma of higher education. I have to chuckle at this little story. So we had to attend a session for presenters for TLC, so that we're in this group Zoom meeting and they're telling Cam and I and all the other attendees, the requirements and how to do this and when everything is due. And after we left that meeting, this is, in higher ed, Cam, how did you feel coming out of that meeting?
I said I didn't know half the words they were saying.
And Cam is this pretty smart guy. I'm not just saying that because I'm his mom. But can you imagine how our students feel? Sometimes I think in higher education, we know the verbiage, we know the lingo, we can talk the talk. And granted, we want to teach them and model it and educate them. But just to be aware of even things like that could be a barrier to belonging. So again, we really want to normalize mental health disorders, that it's who we are. Talk about it, pay attention. So anyway, here's our solutions. Cam kind of spoke to this, is those psychological risks, and we're going to go over these really quickly because we want to get into the takeaway of this presentation. We don't want you to check out on these videos. So basically consider, how can you manage psychological risks? How can you protect and promote mental health? And how can you support those with a mental health disorder to engage and thrive in the workplace or as a student? And I think the first thing is really being aware of and keeping your ear, eye, and listen out to those that do struggle. Not everybody discloses why or that they have a mental health disorder. Sometimes they try to hide it. I know I didn't want anybody knowing for the longest. Cam, I do have to kind of put you on the spot. I'm very proud of you for being very vocal with your supervisor. I don't think you always were. You were worried about the stigma, what people would think of you, but you've been very vocal with your supervisor and in your mental health disorder. Do you mind sharing why or how you did that? I'm very proud of you for doing that. And if more
Yeah,
people would, then you can meet their needs. So if you don't mind sharing why
absolutely.
you chose to do that.
Absolutely. So I do believe, and I'm underneath a personal belief, that any mental health disorder should be brought out onto the table if you choose so. Um, for me, it's something that has been brought up in the past throughout all of my other jobs that have been an issue. Um, as far as the psychosocial aspect, trying to do more than I'm able to, or maybe, putting too much on my plate that I can handle. Um, so I know it seems funny in that slide to say bullying, but that can definitely be a main issue in your mental health at work. For example, I did have supervisors at a workplace that I used to work at who
Yeah, not
anytime,
UAGC.
yep, not UAGC, but anytime I would go ahead and want to take a day off, whether that be PTO, paid time off I do have, sick time, whatever it may be, they would receive or I would receive backlash. There would be always, well, we're gonna need so and so to cover, or well, you can't do that because we need X, Y, and Z. And from what I learned is over the years, you need to make time for yourself. If you don't have time for yourself, you'll only have time for work. And at that point, it can be a very redundant life. So I'm very big on UAGC's culture of care and time management. So, like I said, working with my supervisor and my manager, we have really worked to create a schedule that works for myself. Um, and doing little things like this can help you in your workplace so much more than you can imagine.
Awesome. And if you look at this first column, it seems like you just spoke to how your supervisor helps you manage those psychosocial risks. I'll speak now just a little bit from a faculty perspective. If you work with students or if you're an advisor that works with students, is really communicate with students to understand the risk factors. If we don't know a student is struggling, we can't help, but there are little gives and little tells. So I can understand when a student reaches out, I'm very overwhelmed, I'm very stressed out, I'm going through a lot right now. So I work to, help them uh, come up with flexible due dates, check in with that student. The times that I write back to students, you matter and you belong here, seems to go the farthest. They're very capable adults, right? They didn't get into adulthood not knowing something. So the ability to just support them and encourage them to thrive. Cam, I have seen something in you just even this past week, an example of how your supervisor supported you and engaged you to thrive. Do you mind sharing what you've been doing at work recently and how that's going?
Absolutely. So just this week, my manager did ask if I wanted to reverse shadow an individual or a new trainee. What that is essentially listening in on phone calls in order to assist that new trainee and train that new trainee in how they can take those phone calls better, whether that be doing a full account review, whether that be looking at aggregate limits, whatever that may be. At first, I was uncertain if I would be good at it. I didn't know if I knew as much information as I can confirm I do know. Um, and I was extremely, extremely anxious about it. However, is by doing this, by Cohen or my manager working with me, it took away a lot of those anxieties because he was so communicative about it. He would go ahead and respond to me whenever I needed him, and I had other sorts of support factors as well. So, just by him making me a reverse shadow, it did create and generate just a lot of faith in me as an employee. It also confirmed with me how much information I have learned. So, like I said, it does feel good when a manager notices that and can actually assist you and put you in a position to succeed.
I love that because
Yeah.
when I struggle with adequacy, when I have a PTSD episode, um, having my supervisor still have faith in me means the world. And so we just kind of spoke to these two columns here. We're going to have you pause and reflect in just a moment, not yet, but I want you to look at this chart. And do you teach or advise students? Do you supervise individuals? Or are you like Cam? Are you just part of pride? You maybe don't supervise people, but you're part of a team. And I want you to consider, how could you manage psychosocial risks for those that might be struggling with mental health disorder? How can you protect and promote mental health awareness? And how can you support them and engage them to thrive instead of checking them off and saying, oh, they can't be counted on? Well, that's what my brain thinks. You may not be thinking that, but my brain thinks I can't be counted on. I'm not reliable. How can you engage them to thrive? So let's take a moment now just to pause and reflect. After you think about your role and how you can support them, we'll come back and close this session out. Thank you for taking a moment to pause and reflect on that. We did want to provide you with the references here if you want to look any of that up. We wanted to provide that. And again, take one more moment to close and appreciate you for listening. Cam, do you have any takeaways as we close this session?
I don't believe so. What about
Excellent.
you?
Well, I just want to thank you, Cam, for being having the confidence to share. I think this is going to help a lot of people. I do want to share a metaphor, and this is a metaphor I've shared many times. So if you've heard this before, please excuse it. I want you all to visualize. We live in Florida, so I want you to visualize the best beach drive you've ever taken. You're driving along, you're looking at the sunset. The kids are in the back of the vehicle playing around. You got your favorite song on, and you are just enjoying that drive. You get to see the scenery, you get to breathe. But in a moment's notice here in Florida, the sky can cloud over and the rain will downpour. And you go from driving and enjoying the scenery to kids be quiet. You turn down the radio, and all you can do is focus on the lines that are in front of you and trying to see them. That's what mental health does to belonging. Belonging is the scenery. And when that mental health, anxiety, disorder, whatever that trigger is that hits, the individual that you're working with no longer gets to see the scenery or feel like they belong. So if you can just be on the lookout for those that might be going through the storm, take some time to get to know them and to be mindful of them and to think of those things that you can to support them, your workplace, your students can all feel like they belong. Thank you so much today. Take care.
Thank you.